Everybody's talking in 2026, everybody's posting, proving, explaining. But let me ask you something. Why are so many people loud but still losing? Because they're focused on the world and not focused on themselves. Today, we're fixing that. This year isn't about showing people who you are. It's about becoming someone they can't ignore. And the truth, that doesn't happen with noise. That happens in silence. Because most people get this wrong. They think silence means that you've got nothing to say, that you're unsure, invisible, or afraid to speak up. But that's not what silence is. Silence is control. See, in a world where everybody is rushing to be heard, rushing to prove something, rushing to post every move they make, silence becomes rare. And anything rare is powerful. You don't see it at first, because noise is attractive. Noise gets attention. Noise gets reactions. Noise makes people feel like they exist. But attention is not power. Control is power. And when you choose silence, what you're really choosing is control over yourself. You're choosing not to react to every opinion, not to respond to every insult, not to explain yourself to people who are never going to understand you anyway. That's strength, because it's easy to talk. It's easy to argue. It's easy to defend yourself. It's easy to jump into the noise and try to win every conversation. But it takes discipline to stay quiet. It takes confidence to not feel the need to prove anything. Think about it. Why do people overshare? Why do they announce every plan, every goal, every move? Because deep down, they're looking for validation. They want someone to say, that's amazing. They want someone to approve. They want someone to notice. But when you're truly focused, you don't need that. You don't need applause before the work is done. You don't need people clapping for something you haven't built yet. Because you understand something most people don't. The more you talk about your plans, the less energy you have to execute them. Every time you speak too soon, you release the pressure. And pressure is what creates progress. So instead of talking, you work. Instead of explaining, you improve. Instead of announcing, you act. And while everyone else is busy making noise, you're making moves. Now here's where it gets deeper. Silence doesn't just protect your energy. It protects your vision. Because not everybody around you is meant to understand your journey. Some people will doubt you. Some people will laugh at you. Some people will project their own fears onto you. And if you're constantly talking, constantly sharing, constantly exposing your next step, you give those voices access. You give negativity a doorway into your mind. But when you move in silence, you eliminate that noise. You create space to think clearly, space to grow privately, space to fail, learn, and rebuild without an audience judging every step. Because let's be real, not every stage of your life needs to be seen. Some stages are meant to be lived in private, built in the dark, refined when nobody's watching. That's where real transformation happens. Not on display, not in front of a crowd, but in those quiet moments where it's just you and your discipline. And understand this, silence is not about hiding, it's about timing. Because there will come a moment when you do speak, but when you do, it won't be empty words. It won't be promises. It won't be explanations. It will be backed by results, backed by growth, backed by a version of yourself that people didn't see coming. That's the difference. Anyone can talk about what they're going to do, but not everyone has the patience to stay quiet long enough to actually become it. And when you master that patience, when you become comfortable not being seen, not being praised, not being understood, you unlock a different level of focus, a different level of discipline. Because now you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you. And that's where the shift begins into self-focus and building something real without distraction. The next question is, what do you do with that silence? Because silence alone isn't enough. Silence without direction is just isolation. But silence with focus, that's where transformation begins. You see, when you stop talking, when you stop explaining yourself to the world, something powerful happens. Your attention comes back to you. And for most people, that's uncomfortable because they've spent so much time watching others, scrolling through lives they don't live, comparing themselves to people they don't even know, chasing standards that were never theirs to begin with. So when everything goes quiet, they don't know where to look. But you look inward. That's where self-focus begins, not on what they're doing, not on what they think, not on how they see you, but on who you are becoming. Because at the end of the day, your life doesn't change when others notice you. It changes when you decide to work on yourself consistently, relentlessly, without needing anyone to validate it. And let's be honest, that kind of focus is rare. Because focusing on yourself means facing yourself. It means looking at your habits and asking, is this helping me or hurting me? It means being honest about your discipline, your distractions, your excuses. And that's not easy. It's easier to blame, easier to complain, easier to say, I'll start tomorrow. But self-focus doesn't wait for tomorrow. It starts now. It starts in the small decisions no one sees. Waking up when you said you would. Doing the work even when you don't feel like it. Choosing growth over comfort again and again and again. That's how discipline is built. Not in one big moment, but in 1,000 small ones. See, people think discipline is something you either have or you don't. That's a lie. Discipline is something you build. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build it. Every time you resist distraction, you strengthen it. Every time you choose progress over excuses, you become it. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. No one is coming to save you. No one is coming to push you every day. No one is coming to remind you of your goals. That responsibility, that's yours. And when you truly accept that, you stop waiting. You stop relying on motivation, because motivation fades. It comes and goes. It's there one day, gone the next. But discipline stays. Discipline shows up when you're tired, when you're bored, when you don't feel like doing anything at all. That's what makes it unstoppable. And self-focus is what feeds it. Because when you're focused on yourself, you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You're not worried about who's ahead of you. You're not distracted by who's watching you. You're not chasing approval from people who aren't living your life. You're locked in on your goals, locked in on your growth, locked in on becoming better than you were yesterday. And that kind of focus, it changes everything. Your mindset shifts. You stop thinking short term. You stop looking for quick wins. You stop needing instant results because you understand that real growth takes time. Real change takes consistency, and consistency requires discipline. So instead of rushing the process, you commit to it day after day, step by step, even when it feels slow, even when no one notices. Because you're not doing it for attention. You're doing it because you know where you're going. And every decision you make either moves you closer or pulls you further away. So you choose carefully. You choose discipline. Again and again and again, until it becomes who you are, until it's no longer something you force, but something you live. And once you reach that level, something else starts to happen. You begin to see distractions for what they really are, not opportunities, not entertainment, but obstacles. Things designed to pull your focus away from what actually matters. And that's where the next challenge begins, learning how to ignore the noise, the opinions, and the endless distractions trying to break your focus. You've learned how to stay silent. You've started building discipline. But here's the reality no one warns you about. The moment you begin to level up, distractions don't disappear. They multiply. Because growth makes you a target. Not just for others, but for everything that wants your attention. Your phone starts calling you louder. Social media feels harder to ignore. People who never cared before suddenly have opinions about your life. And if you're not careful, you'll lose your focus chasing things that were never meant for you. See, distractions don't always look like problems. Sometimes they look like opportunities. Sometimes they look like fun. Sometimes they look like people. But not everything that grabs your attention deserves it. That's the difference between someone who succeeds and someone who stays stuck. One reacts to everything. The other chooses carefully. Because when you're truly focused, you understand that attention is a currency. And every time you spend it on something useless, you're paying with your future. Think about how many hours people lose every single day scrolling through content that doesn't improve them, watching lives they don't live, arguing with strangers who don't matter. And for what? A moment of distraction, a temporary escape. But every escape comes with a cost, because while your distracted time is moving, opportunities are passing, your goals are waiting. And the worst part, you don't even realize how much you're losing until it's too late. That's why focus isn't just about working hard. It's about protecting your mind, protecting your time, protecting your energy. Because not everyone deserves access to you. And not every opinion deserves a response. Let's talk about opinions, because this is where most people lose. The fear of what others think. It's subtle. It doesn't always show up as fear. Sometimes it shows up as hesitation. You want to start, but you think, what will they say? You want to improve, but you think, what if they judge me? You want to move differently, but you think, what if they don't understand? And just like that, you stop yourself. Not because you can't do it, but because you're too focused on them. But here's the truth. People will always have something to say. When you're doing nothing, they'll question you. When you start doing something, they'll doubt you. And when you finally succeed, they'll talk about you. So no matter what you do, you can't escape opinions. But you can choose how much power they have over you. And when you're serious about growth, you give them none. Because you realize something important. Most people giving opinions aren't living the life you want. They're not where you're trying to go. They haven't built what you're trying to build. So why would you let their words influence your actions? Why would you let their doubts become your limits? You wouldn't. Not when you're focused. Not when you've got a vision that matters more than their approval. And that's the mindset shift. You stop seeking validation. You stop needing permission. You stop explaining your moves to people who don't understand your mission. Because you're not here to impress them. You're here to improve yourself. And improvement requires separation. Separation from distractions. Separation from noise. Separation from environments that pull you backwards instead of pushing you forward. That might mean spending more time alone. That might mean saying no more often. That might mean letting go of things that once felt comfortable. But growth isn't comfortable. Growth is focused. Growth is intentional. And growth requires sacrifice. Because every time you say yes to distraction, you're saying no to your potential. Every time you react to an opinion, you're giving away your control. So you start moving differently. You become harder to reach, harder to distract, harder to influence. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're disciplined. Because you know what you want. And you refuse to let anything or anyone take you off that path. And as you keep moving like this, ignoring the noise, blocking out the distractions, staying locked into your purpose, something powerful begins to happen. Your actions start to speak louder than anything you could ever say. And that's where the real shift takes place. Now you've reached a different level. You're silent. You're focused. You've learned how to block out distractions and ignore opinions. But none of that matters if you can't stay consistent. Because here's the truth. Anyone can be focused for a day. Anyone can feel motivated for a week. Anyone can start strong. But very few people keep going. Very few people show up when it's boring. When it's repetitive, when it feels like nothing is changing. That's where consistency separates you from everyone else. Because success isn't built in moments of hype. It's built in routines, in habits, in the things you do every single day, whether you feel like it or not. And this is where most people fall off, not because they're not capable, but because they're addicted to results. They want to see progress instantly. They want proof that it's working. They want rewards before they've put in the time. And when that doesn't happen, they quit, they slow down, they get distracted again. They start looking for something new. But consistency doesn't work like that. Consistency requires patience. It requires you to trust the process, even when you can't see the outcome yet. Because real growth is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up overnight. It builds slowly beneath the surface, just like everything that lasts. Think about it. A strong body isn't built in one workout. A sharp mind isn't built in one day of learning. A successful life isn't built in one big moment. It's built in repetition, in discipline applied over time. And that's why consistency is so powerful. Because while everyone else is chasing quick wins, you're building something permanent, something solid, something that doesn't break under pressure. But let's be real, consistency isn't easy. There will be days you don't feel like showing up, days where you're tired, days where you're frustrated, days where it feels like all your effort isn't paying off. And in those moments, you have a choice. You can listen to your feelings, or you can stick to your standards. That's the difference. Because feelings change. They're unreliable. They tell you to stop when things get hard. They tell you to rest when you should push. They tell you to quit when you're closer than you think. But standards don't change. Standards say, I show up no matter what. Standards say, I do the work even when I don't feel like it. Standards say, I finish what I started. And when you live by standards instead of feelings, consistency becomes automatic. It becomes part of who you are. Not something you struggle with. Not something you negotiate with. But something you embody. And once you reach that point, you don't need motivation anymore. You don't need reminders. You don't need anyone watching you. Because you've built a system within yourself. A system that keeps going no matter what's happening outside. And that's where the real power is. Because while others are distracted, while others are inconsistent, while others are talking about what they're going to do, you're already doing it. Day by day, step by step, without noise, without excuses. And slowly your results start to show. Not all at once, not in a way that screams for attention, but in a way that can't be ignored. Your mindset changes, your habits improve, your confidence grows, and people start to notice. They start asking questions. How did you do it? When did this happen? What changed? And the answer, nothing changed overnight. There was no big announcement, no loud moment, just consistency, just silent work repeated over time. That's what they didn't see. That's what they missed while they were distracted by noise. And now, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to prove anything, because your life speaks for you. Your results answer for you. And everything you built in silence finally stands in the light. This was never about being loud, never about proving something to the world, never about chasing attention. It was about you, about learning when to stay silent so you can hear yourself think, about focusing on your own path so you stop getting lost in someone else's, about ignoring distractions and opinions so nothing can shake your direction, and about showing up every single day so your actions become stronger than your words. Because in the end, people can doubt what you say. They can question your plans. They can ignore your voice. But they can't ignore results. And results don't come from noise. They come from discipline. They come from focus. They come from consistency built in silence. So in 2026, you don't need to announce anything. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove anyone wrong. You just need to work quietly, relentlessly, patiently. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them underestimate you. Because while they're watching the noise, you're building something real. And when it's finally time to be seen, you won't have to say a word.